This was set up to be an astronomer. I made him a little telescope piece. But I wasn't pleased with how he was going, so I said fuck it and stopped working on it. And now I'm like, I could just take that away and use him as a base. I don't know. Does it look like a storyteller? Look into his eyes and tell me if you see a storyteller there.
I cannot see that much detail to tell. Like as per the usual, the video quality is extremely pixelated, so all I can see is a sort of a beige blob.
Am a blob to you?
Bringing it closer doesn't help.
All right, fine. I'll make the executive call. I mean, I have all of these blobs that are for heads. So they're exactly the right size to make heads out of. Oh, there's a head that I made, but this was before I realized I had to wire up the ears. Anyway, yeah. I'll make some kind of decision.
Sounds like a plan. Also, bring this down a bit.
Do you know if Dad ever watches these?
I have no idea. Okay. I don't think anyone ever watches these, but
right? It's our secret little corner of the interwebs. I can't decide whether I want to do a spruceling with mustache and glasses or a girl with the pearl earring and the mustache and the glasses.
Ooh. They're both great. I'm trying to think if he has wall space for more wall art at the moment.
That could be a no. Understandable, as with most of the people who know me.
Well, he also has a habit of buying, like, he's got a few other friends that are artists.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if he has wall space, so maybe do a spruceling.
I shall. In which case, this one strikes me as one that would look great with a little mustache. Okay.
All right.
I haven't done this in forever. Let me fetch my bizarre piece of furniture. Hey. Yes. This is the piece of furniture that lets me do my work and make it visible and also see what I'm doing. Do you remember where we are?
Indeed. The gaffer was talking about how Mr. Bilbo taught Sam to read. Meaning no harm, mark you, and I hope no harm will come of it.
Yep.
Elves and dragons, I says to him. Cabbages and potatoes are better for me and you. Don't go getting mixed up in the businesses of your betters, or you'll land in trouble too big for you, I says to him.
Wait a second.
Others.
Did the gaffer just say that he told Sam not to go chasing waterfalls, but to stick to the rivers and the lakes that he's used to?
Well, technically, I think he said don't go chasing waterfalls, stick to the cabbages and potatoes that you're used to, but
yes. Ah, Gaffer, you're a smart man. Hobbit.
And I might say it to others, he added, with a look at the stranger and the miller. But the gaffer did not convince his audience. The legend of Bilbo's wealth was now too firmly fixed in the minds of the younger generations of hobbits. Ah, but he's likely enough been adding to what he brought at first, argued the miller, voicing common opinion. He's often away from home. And look at the outlandish folk that visit him. Dwarves coming at night, and that old wandering conjurer Gandalf and all. You can say what you like, Gaffer, but Bag End's a queer place, and its folk are queer.
Yay, queer!
Yay! I also love that it's that Hobbit's opinion of Gandalf, like, perennially love that Hobbit's opinion of Gandalf is that old wandering conjurer and not that demigod that somehow
Right?
just rolls up and lets us treat him like a jerk. And you can say what you like.
That omnipowerful diva.
You can say what you like about what you know more of than you do of boating, Mr. Sandyman, retorted the gaffer, disliking the miller even more than usual.
Burn.
If that's being queer, then we could do with a bit more queerness in these parts. That's what I always say.
Words to live by.
There's some not far away that wouldn't offer a pint of beer to a friend if they lived in a hole with golden walls. They do things proper at Bag End. Our Sam says that everyone's going to be invited to the party, and there's going to be presents, mark you. Presents for all, this very month as is. That very month was September, and as fine as you could ask. A day or two later, a rumor, probably started by the knowledgeable Sam, was spread about that there were going to be fireworks. Fireworks, what is more, such as had not been seen in the Shire for nigh on a century, not indeed since the old Took died. You gotta wonder a lot about what happened in the Shire in the old Took's lifetime. Because every once in a while they'll be like, yes, this hasn't happened since the old Took died. And you're like,
right?
What's this guy?
And I think the old Took was Garanshan, which means they also haven't reorganized the furniture in the Smiles since he died. Like, fucker was important.
Days passed, and the day drew nearer. An odd-looking wagon laden with odd-looking packages rolled into Hobbiton one evening and toiled up the hill to Bag End. The startled hobbits peered out of lamplit doors to gape at it. It was driven by outlandish folk singing strange songs, dwarves with long beards and deep hoods. A few of them remained at Bag End.
All right, so I have to ask, because it comes up all the time when he says they're singing strange songs. I'm like, what song would you want them to be singing?
Rah Rah Rasputin.
That is one of the stranger songs.
It is a very strange song.
And in 4-part dwarf harmony, that would be freaking brilliant.
There was a man in Russia long ago.
Long ago.
At the end of the second week in September, a cart came in through Bywater from the direction of the Brandywine Bridge in broad daylight. An old man was driving it all alone. He wore a tall pointed blue hat, a long grey cloak, and a silver scarf. He had a long white beard and bushy eyebrows that stuck out beyond the brim of his hat.
Those are hella eyebrows right there.
I was thinking, like, the way that Gandalf's hat is usually illustrated, the brim is like 6 inches wide.
Yeah.
So
that's
a lot of eyebrow.
Yeah. The way,
frankly,
the way it's
too
described, though, it isn't described as a wide brim hat. So I kind of sort of picture the character design of Merlin from Sword in the Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Like just a very, just a cone, basically.
Yeah.
With eyebrows sticking out. I don't like that, though. I don't think
I don't like that either. Just the whole tall pointed blue hat thing, like, I know it's very stereotypical wizard for reasons that, probably Tolkien partly invented it, but just I don't know about it.
I don't either. I think if it were canon that Gandalf keeps sandwiches in the tip, that would make sense.
Yes.
Otherwise, it really doesn't.
Small hobbit children ran after the cart all through Hobbiton and right up the hill. It had a cargo of fireworks, as they rightly guessed. At Bilbo's front door, the old man began to unload. There were great bundles of fireworks of all sorts and shapes, each labeled with a large red G and the elf rune, G. That was Gandalf's mark, of course. And the old man was Gandalf the wizard, whose fame in the Shire was due mainly to his skill with fires, smokes, and lights. His real business was far more difficult and dangerous, but the Shire folk knew nothing about it. To them, he was just one of the attractions at the party. Hence the excitement of the Hobbit children. "G for grand!" they shouted, and the old man smiled. They knew him by sight, though he only appeared in Hobbiton occasionally, and never stopped long. Neither they nor any but the oldest of their elders had seen one of his firework displays. They now belonged to the legendary past. When the old man, helped by Bilbo and some dwarves, had finished unloading, Bilbo gave a few pennies away, but not a single squib or cracker was forthcoming, to the disappointment of the onlookers. "Run away now," said Gandalf. "You will get plenty when the time comes." Then he disappeared inside with Bilbo, and the door was shut. The young hobbit stared at the door in vain for a while, and then made off, feeling that the day of the party would never come.
I rather prefer
Inside-
that scene in the movie, honestly.
Mm-hmm. It establishes Gandalf as a little bit more personable.
Yeah. Yeah, a little more, I don't know, lovable
Yeah.
and quirky.
But I mean, that's movie Gandalf versus book Gandalf in general, too.
I mean, all of them are more human in the movies than the books. And less salty.
I was going to say bitchy.
Yep.
Inside Bag End, Bilbo and Gandalf were sitting at the open window of a small room, looking out west onto the garden. The late afternoon was bright and peaceful. The flowers glowed red and golden, snapdragons and sunflowers and nasturtiums trailing all over the turf walls and peeping in at the round windows. "How bright your garden looks," said Gandalf. "Yes," said Bilbo. "I am very fond indeed of it, and of all the dear old Shire. But I think I need a holiday." "You mean to go on with your plan, then?" "I do. I made up my mind months ago, and I haven't changed it." "Very well. It is no good saying any more. Stick to your plan. Your whole plan, mind."
Why does Gandalf
Yes.
know the plan?
I mean, presumably Bilbo told him the plan at some point.
Months ago, right? But Gandalf it's like he hardly ever shows up. Except that he did a few months ago when Bilbo was like, I think I'm going to leave all my crap to Frodo and run away.
I mean, that seems like the kind of thing that Bilbo would like tell Gandalf, though. Or like maybe he wrote to him.
Right.
Care of
Gandalf,
Elrond. And
care
was like,
of meh.
I feel like Elrond, like he would write to Elrond and be like, "Hey buddy, can I come visit? By the way, if Gandalf comes through, let him know. I'm
That's
giving
perfect.
all my crap away."
Yep.
But also Gandalf had to know
Good
somehow
idea.
because he made and brought fireworks.
That's right. Dear Elrond, when you see Gandalf, tell him to bring a shit ton of fireworks to the Shire because I plan to run away and I want to startle everyone first and give all my shit to Frodo. Much love, etc.
Stick to your plan, your whole plan, mind. And I hope it will turn out for the best, for you and for all of us. I hope so. Anyway, I mean to enjoy myself on Thursday and have my little joke. Who will laugh, I wonder, said Gandalf, shaking his head. We shall see, said Bilbo. Who will laugh, you dramatic bitch? The next day more carts rolled up the hill, and still more carts. There might have been some grumbling about dealing locally, but that very week orders began to pour out of Bag End for every kind of provision, commodity, or luxury that could be obtained in Hobbiton or Bywater, or anywhere in the neighborhood. People became enthusiastic, and they began to tick off the days on the calendar, and they watched eagerly for the postman, hoping for invitations. Before long, the invitations began pouring out, and the Hobbiton post office was blocked, and the Bywater post office was snowed under, and voluntary assistant postmen were called for. There was a constant stream of them going up the hill, carrying hundreds of polite variations on "Thank you, I shall certainly come." A notice appeared on the gate at Bag End. No admittance except on party business. Even those who had or pretended to have party business were seldom allowed inside.
Well, that would totally be
Bilbo
me.
was busy, writing invitations, ticking off answers, packing up presents, and making some private preparations of his own. From the time of Gandalf's arrival, he remained hidden from view. One morning, the hobbits woke to find the large field south of Bilbo's front door covered with ropes and poles for tents and pavilions. A special entrance was cut into the bank leading to the road, and wide steps and a large white gate were built there. The 3 hobbit families of Bagshot Row, adjoining the field, were intensely interested and generally envied. Old Gaffer Gamgee stopped even pretending to work in his garden. The tents began to go up. There was a specially large pavilion, so big that the tree that grew in the field was right inside it, and stood proudly near one end at the head of the chief table. Lanterns were hung on all its branches. More promising still, to the hobbit's mind, an enormous open-air kitchen was erected in the north corner of the field. A draft of cooks from every inn and eating house for miles around arrived to supplement the dwarves and other odd folk that were quartered at Bag End. Excitement rose to its height. Then the weather clouded over. That was on Wednesday, the eve of the party. Anxiety was intense. Then Thursday, September the 22nd, actually dawned. The sun got up, the clouds vanished, flags were unfurled, and the fun began.
Why did he have to give us anxiety? Every time I read it, I'm like, oh God, no!
Oh no, it's gonna rain!
It's gonna rain, it's gonna ruin the party! Oh wait, no, we're fine.
They would have just partied in the rain, let's be real.
It's true.
Bilbo Baggins called it a party, but it was really a variety of entertainments rolled into one. Practically everybody living near was invited. A very few were overlooked by accident, but as they turned up all the same, that did not matter. Many people from other parts of the Shire were also asked, and there were even a few from outside the borders. Sudden headcanon that Bilbo actually invited Tom Bombadil, and just nobody noticed.
And he's totally there. Oh my
He's
God.
totally there. He's having a great time. Because he would have, he would have gone.
Oh, he would have. Yeah. And he's just a little bigger than a hobbit, so he wasn't really like attracting attention.
Right. And the hobbits were all distracted by Gandalf and the dwarves and whatever, so they were just like, huh.
Extra big hobbit.
That's a tall dude. Anyway.
Oh my gosh.
Bilbo met the guests and additions at the new White Gate in person. He gave away presents to all and sundry.
I know he's like the oldest, but so is Treebeard. What if the reason Bombadil is the size that he is because he used to be hobbit-sized and Treebeard made him at draft to drink?
Very possible.
Okay.
Have we talked about the theory that the hobbits are descended from the Entwives?
Yes, that was mine.
Okay.
Or at least as far as I know, it's mine.
Well, then I guess we must have talked about it because I heard about it from somewhere.
Right? Like Iluvatar made hobbits because the Entwives created the Shire and then were like lonely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Let's see. He gave away presents to all and sundry. The latter were those who went out again by a back way and came in again by the gate. Hobbits give presents to other people on their own birthdays. Not very expensive ones, as a rule, and not so lavishly as on this occasion, but it was not a bad system. Actually, in Hobbiton and Bywater, every day in the year it was somebody's birthday, so that every hobbit in those parts had a fair chance of at least one present at least once a week. But they never got tired of them. On this occasion, the presents were unusually good. The hobbit children were so excited that for a while they almost forgot about eating. Almost. They are hobbit children.
Exactly.
There were toys the like of which they had never seen before, all beautiful, and some obviously magical. Many of them had indeed been ordered a year before, and had come all the way from the mountain and from Dale, and were of real dwarf make. When every guest had been welcomed and was finally inside the gate, there were songs, dances, music, games, and of course food and drink. There were 3 official meals: lunch, tea, and dinner, or supper. But lunch and tea were marked chiefly by the fact that at those times all the guests were sitting down and eating together. At other times there were merely lots of people eating and drinking, continuously from 11s until 6:30 when the fireworks started. The fireworks were by Gandalf. They were not only brought by him, but designed and made by him, and the special effects, set pieces, and flights of rockets were let off by him. There was also a generous distribution of squibs, crackers, bacca-rappers, sparklers, torches, dwarf candles, elf fountains, goblin barkers, and thunderclaps. They were all superb. The art of Gandalf improved with age. Can we also talk about how, like, Gandalf just makes fireworks as a hobby? Like, he's out here being, like, semi-deity, safe in the world, and then to relax, he just goes somewhere and blows shit up.
As if he could be more relatable. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah, it's funny. And it's interesting. I don't know that I'd thought about it this way before, but so Tolkien has established that there is gunpowder in Middle-earth by showing Gandalf with his fireworks, but then the only other application we see for gunpowder is that the bad guys use it as a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, good guys use this for its proper application of entertainment. And
yes, and also it suggests that only the Maiar know about gunpowder, because the only bad guys that use it are Saruman's guys.
That's right.
So the only people that ever use it are wizards.
Yeah, men don't use...
Men don't, elves don't, dwarves don't.
No. And orcs
Even
only
Sauron
because they work for a Maya. All right. Yeah, it's a Maiar art.
Must be. There were rockets like a flight of scintillating birds singing with sweet voices. There were green trees with trunks of dark smoke. Their leaves opened like a whole spring unfolding in a moment, and their shining branches dropped glowing flowers down upon the astonished hobbits, disappearing with a sweet scent just before they touched their upturned faces. There were fountains of butterflies that flew glittering into the trees. There were pillars of colored fires that rose and turned into eagles or sailing ships, or a phalanx of flying swans. There was a red thunderstorm and a shower of yellow rain. There was a forest of silver spears that sprang suddenly into the air with a yell like an embattled army, and came down again into the water with a hiss like 100 hot snakes. Do hot snakes hiss significantly differently than cold ones?
Yes, if you're cooking them.
And there was also one last surprise in honor of Bilbo, and it startled the hobbits exceedingly, as Gandalf intended, because he's kind of a troll.
Because he is.
The lights went out. A great smoke went up. It shaped itself like a mountain seen in the distance and began to glow at the summit. It spouted green and scarlet flames. Out flew a red golden dragon, not life-size, but terribly lifelike. Fire came from his jaws, his eyes glared down. There was a roar, and he whizzed 3 times over the heads of the crowd. They all ducked, and many fell flat on their faces. The dragon passed like an express train, turned a somersault, and burst over Bywater with a deafening explosion.
All right. So Tolkien mostly sticks to similes that would make sense to the characters in the story.
Mm-hmm. And then we have the dragon passed like an express train.
That's for the benefit of his readers, I assume. But if it were like a translation of some ancient texts that he'd found the way it is in universe, what was that simile? I wonder.
I honestly can't think of anything in universe that would be similar to an express train.
Except maybe a dragon.
Yep.
Dragon passed
the dragon
like
passed
dragon.
like a dragon passed like a big ass dragon.
A big fucking dragon.
It flapped around like a great big flappy leathery thing.
The only other time when it kind of like breaks universe that comes to mind is when Aragorn is looking down at the Tower of Ithilien that was like a pencil tipped with silver, and I'm like, they have pencils in Middle Earth?
See, that one I could believe though, because like, you gotta have something for marking things temporarily, and not every place has chalk.
And
So,
graphite ain't hard to find. So it works. It's just a weird comparison, even though it works. Like, it shows me in my mind the proportions of the tower and how small it looks from up here.
yeah, but it is definitely weird. Like, yes, they would have had presumably something similar to pencils, but also Aragorn, not really a guy who strikes me as doing a lot of writing. No, okay, no, that's not true though, because he writes a bunch of poetry when he's staying with Elrond.
You know, he was raised in Rivendell. He probably had a shit ton of homework to do. But that does not excuse Express Train.
No, there were no express trains in Rivendell. That is the signal for supper, said Bilbo. The pain and alarm vanished at once, and the prostrate hobbits leaped to their feet. There was a splendid supper for everyone, that is, except those invited to the special family dinner party. This was held in the great pavilion with the tree. The invitations were limited to 12 dozen, a number also called by the hobbits one gross, although the word was not considered proper to use of people. And the guests were selected from all the families to which Bilbo and Frodo were related, with the addition of a few special unrelated friends, such as Gandalf. Many young hobbits were included, and present by parental permission, for hobbits were easygoing with their children in the matter of sitting up late, especially when there was a chance of getting them a free meal. Bringing up young hobbits took a lot of provender. There were many Bagginses and Boffins, and also many Tooks and Brandybucks. There were various Grubbs, relations of Bilbo Baggins's grandmother, and various Chubbs, connections of his Took grandfather, and a selection of Burrowses, Bolgers, Bracegirdles, Brockhouses, Goodbodies, Hornblowers, and Proudfoots. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo.
I want to be a good body.
Check. We got a good body and a 2-foot.
Sure, Dad.
That part's too weird. That just doesn't work. Especially not you calling me dad on account of, like, we have a dad.
We do.
That we mutually call dad, and it's weird.
Yep. So you'll have to be a different 2-foot.
I will have to be a different 2-foot, yes.
And I'll be, I don't know, Gwynella Goodbody, and then I can use that as my burlesque name.
That is an excellent burlesque name. I fully support that. Some of these were only very distantly connected with Bilbo, and some of them had hardly ever been in Hobbiton before, as they lived in remote corners of the Shire. The Sackville Bagginses were not forgotten. Otho and his wife Lobelia were present. They disliked Bilbo and detested Frodo, but so magnificent was the invitation card written in golden ink that they had felt it was impossible to refuse. Besides, their cousin Bilbo had been specializing in food for many years, and his table had a high reputation. And with hobbits, that's saying something.
Right? Shit.
All the 144 guests expected a pleasant feast, although they rather dreaded the after-dinner speech of their host, an inevitable item. He was liable to drag in bits of what he called poetry, and sometimes after a glass or two would allude to the absurd adventures of his mysterious journey. The guests were not disappointed. They had a very pleasant feast, in fact an engrossing entertainment, rich, abundant, varied, and prolonged. The purchase of provisions fell to almost nothing throughout the district in the ensuing weeks. But as Bilbo's catering had depleted the stocks of most stores, cellars, and warehouses for miles around, that did not matter much. After the feast, more or less, came the speech. Most of the company were, however, now in a tolerant mood, at that delightful stage which they called filling up the corners.
That
They
sounds
were
familiar. 2 days ago.
Yep. They were sipping their favorite drinks and nibbling at their favorite dainties, and their fears were forgotten. They were prepared to listen to anything and to cheer at every full stop. "My dear people," began Bilbo, rising in his place. "Hear, hear, hear!" they shouted, and kept on repeating it in chorus, even seeming reluctant to follow their own advice. Bilbo left his place and went and stood on a chair under the illuminated tree. The light of the lanterns fell on his beaming face. The golden buttons shone on his embroidered silk waistcoat. They could all see him standing, waving one hand in the air. The other was in his trouser pocket. "My dear Bagginses and Boffins," he began again, "and my dear Tooks and Brandybucks, and Grubbs and Chubbs, and Burrowses and Hornblowers, and Bolgers, Bracegirdles, Goodbodies, Brockhouses, and Proudfoots." "Proud feet!" shouted an elderly hobbit from the back of the pavilion. His name, of course, was Proudfoot, and well merited. His feet were large, exceptionally furry, and both were on the table. "Proudfoots," repeated Bilbo. "Also, my good Sackville Bagginses, that I welcome back at last to Bag End. Today is my 111th birthday. I am 111 today." "Hooray! Hooray! Many happy returns!" they shouted, and they hammered joyously on the tables. Bilbo was doing splendidly. This was the sort of stuff they liked, short and obvious. "I hope you are all enjoying yourselves as much as I am." Deafening cheers. Cries of yes and no. Noises of trumpets and horns, pipes and flutes, and other musical instruments. There were, as has been said, many young hobbits present. Hundreds of musical crackers had been pulled. Most of them bore the mark Dale on them, which did not convey much to most of the hobbits, but they all agreed they were marvelous crackers. They contained instruments, small but of perfect make and enchanting tone. Indeed, in one corner some young Tooks and Brandybucks, supposing Uncle Bilbo to have finished, since he had plainly said all that was necessary, now got up an impromptu orchestra and began a merry dance tune. Master Everard Took and Miss Melilot Brandybuck got on a table, and with bells in their hands, began to dance the Springle Ring. A pretty dance, but rather vigorous. But Bilbo had not finished. Seizing a horn from a youngster near by, he blew 3 loud hoots. The noise subsided. "I shall not keep you long," he cried. Cheers from all the assembly. "I have called you all together for a purpose."
For
Something in the way that
a
he said this made an
purpose!
impression. "For a glorious porpoise." I honestly cannot say the word purpose most of the time in any other way except porpoise.
Yep.
I've called you all together for a porpoise. There was almost silence, and one or two of the Tooks pricked up their ears. "Indeed, for 3 purposes.
Porpoise?
First of all, to tell you that I am immensely fond of you all, and that 111 years is too short a time to live among such excellent and admirable hobbits." Tremendous outburst of approval. "I don't know half of you half as well as I should like, and I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve." This was unexpected and rather difficult. There was some scattered clapping, but most of them were trying to work it out and see if it came to a compliment. Which indeed it does not.
Right.
"Secondly, to celebrate my birthday." Cheers again. "I should say our birthday, for it is of course also the birthday of my heir and nephew, Frodo. He comes of age and into his inheritance today." Some perfunctory clapping by the elders, some loud shouts of "Frodo! Frodo! Jolly old Frodo!" from the juniors. The Sackville Bagginses scowled and wondered what was meant by coming into his inheritance. "Together we score 144.
Can't put one over on Lobelia.
Your numbers were chosen to fit this remarkable total. 1 gross, if I may use the expression." No cheers. This was ridiculous. Many of his guests, and especially the Sackville Bagginses, were insulted, feeling sure they had only been asked to fill up the required number like goods in a package. 1 gross, indeed. Vulgar expression. It is also, if I may be allowed to refer to ancient history, the anniversary of my arrival by barrel at Askaroth on the Long Lake, though the fact that it was my birthday slipped my memory on that occasion. I was only 51 then, and birthdays did not seem so important. The banquet was very splendid, however, though I had a bad cold at the time, I remember, and could only say, "Thank you very much." I now repeat it more correctly. Thank you very much for coming to my little party. Obstinate silence. They all feared that a song or some poetry was now imminent, and they were getting bored. Why couldn't he stop talking and let them drink his health? But Bilbo did not sing or recite. He paused for a moment. Thirdly and finally, he said, I wish to make an announcement.
Announcement!
He spoke this last word so loudly and suddenly that everyone sat up who still could. I regret to announce that, though, as I said, 71 years is far too short a time to spend among you, this is the end. I am going. I am leaving now. Goodbye. He stepped down and vanished. There was a blinding flash of light, and the guests all blinked. When they opened their eyes, Bilbo was nowhere to be seen. 144 flabbergasted hobbits sat back, speechless. Old Odo Proudfoot removed his feet from the table and stamped. Then there was a dead silence, until suddenly, after several deep breaths, every Baggins, Boffin, Took, Brandybuck, Grubb, Chubb, Burrows, Bolger, Bracegirdle, Brockhouse, Goodbody, Hornblower, and Proudfoot began to talk at once. It was generally agreed that the joke was in very bad taste, and more food and drink were needed to cure the guests of shock and annoyance. "He's mad. I always said so," was probably the most popular comment. Even the Tooks, with a few exceptions, thought Bilbo's behavior was absurd. For the moment, most of them took it for granted that his disappearance was nothing more than a ridiculous prank. But old Rory Brandybuck was not so sure. Neither age nor an enormous dinner had clouded his wits, and he said to his daughter-in-law, Esmeralda, "There's something fishy in this, my dear. I believe that mad Baggins is off again. Silly old fool. But why worry? He hasn't taken the victuals with him." He called loudly to Frodo to send the wine round again. Frodo was the only one present who had said nothing. For some time he had sat silent beside Bilbo's empty chair and ignored all remarks and questions. He had enjoyed the joke, of course, even though he had been in the know. He had difficulty in keeping from laughter at the indignant surprise of the guests. But at the same time he felt deeply troubled. He realized suddenly that he loved the old hobbit dearly. Most of the guests went on eating and drinking and discussing Bilbo Baggins's oddities, past and present, but the Sackville Bagginses had already departed in wrath. Frodo did not want to have any more to do with the party. He gave orders for more wine to be served. Then he got up and drained his own glass silently to the health of Bilbo, and slipped out of the pavilion. As for Bilbo Baggins, even while he was making his speech, he had been fingering the golden ring in his pocket, his magic ring that he had kept secret for so many years. As he stepped down, he slipped it on his finger, and he was never seen by any hobbit in Hobbiton again. He walked briskly back to his hole, and stood for a moment listening with a smile to the din in the pavilion and to the sounds of merrymaking in other parts of the field. Then he went in. He took off his party clothes, folded up and wrapped in tissue paper his embroidered silk waistcoat, and put it away. Then he put on quickly some old untidy garments, and fastened round his waist a worn leather belt. On it he hung a short sword in a battered black leather scabbard. From a locked drawer, smelling of mothballs, he took out an old cloak and hood. They had been locked up as if they were very precious, but they were so patched and weather-stained that their original color could hardly be guessed. It might have been dark green. They were rather too large for him.
So, obviously the large dark green cloak and hood are the ones that he wore on his previous adventure.
Indeed.
He lost that cloak and hood in the goblin mines. So, either one of the dwarfs hung on to it, because when he's running away from the mines, it said, Yes, he had escaped, but he was in a bad way. He had no food. He had no ponies. He had lost his friends. He'd even lost his cloak.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I guess my headcanon is that, like, whoever was carrying him last, Dory or Bomber or somebody, just like had a grip on the edge of it and kept like just dragged it along.
I feel like that could be a thing, or like, yeah, that's the only way that it really works, huh?
I mean, yeah, that's really it. That's because it's definitely that one. There's
It has
no
to be. I
way
mean,
he replaced his original dark green dwarf cloak with a different dark green dwarf cloak and then treated it
no,
like no.
that seems unlikely.
All right. Glad we're
All
on the
right,
same page then.
indeed.
So that implies a scene where Gandalf is like, "Is everybody here? Who's got the Hobbit?" And one of them's like, "Got his cloak."
And then when they reunite, they're like, "Oh, hey, we got your cloak." And
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, I thought I lost that. Thanks. I've been freezing."
Perfect. Okay. Awesome.
He then went into his study, and from a large strongbox took out a bundle wrapped in old cloths and a leather-bound manuscript, and also a large, bulky envelope. The book and bundle he stuffed into the top of a heavy bag that was standing there, already nearly full. Into the envelope he slipped his golden ring and its fine chain, and then sealed it, and addressed it to Frodo. At first he put it on the mantelpiece, but suddenly he removed it, and stuck it in his pocket. At that moment the door opened, and Gandalf came quickly in. "Hello," said Bilbo. "I wondered if you would turn up." "I am glad to find you visible," replied the wizard, sitting down in a chair. "I wanted to catch you and have a few final words. I suppose you feel that everything has gone off splendidly and according to plan." Gandalf is just so bitchy. Like, even here, he's like, "I suppose you feel like everything went great, huh?"
Right.
Why you gotta say it like that?
Why you gotta say it like that? Why can't you be like, "Well, that was fun"? Nope. He's stressing out. Something's bothering him and he doesn't know what it is.
Yeah, fair
His
enough.
his our senses are tingling and he's like, "What?"
"Yes, I do," said Bilbo, "though that flash was surprising. It quite startled me, let alone the others. A little addition of your own, I suppose?" "It was. You have wisely kept that ring secret all these years. It seemed to me necessary to give your guests something else that would seem to explain your sudden vanishment." "And would spoil my joke. You are an interfering old busybody," laughed Bilbo. "But I expect you know best, as usual." "I do, when I know anything. But I don't feel
I
too
don't
sure."
always know things, but when I do, I know best.
"But I don't feel too sure about this whole affair. It has now come to the final point. You have had your joke, and alarmed or offended most of your relations, and given the whole Shire something to talk about for 9 days. Or 99, more likely. Are you going any further?" "Yes, I
All the
am.
way.
I feel I need a holiday. A very long holiday, as I have told you before. Probably a permanent holiday. I don't expect I shall return. In fact, I don't mean to, and I have made all arrangements. I am old, Gandalf. I don't look it, but I am beginning to feel it in my heart of hearts. Well preserved, indeed," he snorted. "Why, I feel all thin, sort of stretched, if you know what I mean. Like butter that has been scraped over too much bread. That can't be right. I need a change or something." Gandalf looked curiously and closely at him. "No, it does not seem right," he said thoughtfully. "No, after all, I believe your plan is probably the best. Well, I've made up my mind, anyway. I want to see mountains again, Gandalf. Mountains. Then find somewhere where I can rest, in peace and quiet, without a lot of relatives prying round and a string of confounded visitors hanging on the bell. I might find somewhere where I can finish my book. and I've thought of a nice ending for it. And he lived happily ever after to the end of his days. Gandalf laughed. I hope he will, but nobody will read the book, however it ends. Again, such a bitch!
Such a bitch. What a weird thing to say. God, no wonder he hangs out with hobbits, because they forgive him all of these. They're like, oh yeah, we're just making conversation.
Hobbit's second language is passive aggression. Oh, they may in years to come. Frodo has read some already, as far as it has gone. You'll keep an eye on Frodo, won't you? Yes, I will. 2 eyes, as often as I can spare them. Just checking the time, hang on. Okay.
5 till.
He would come with me, of course, if I asked him. In fact, he offered to once, just before the party. But he does not really want to yet. I want to see the wild country again before I die, and the mountains. And he is still in love with the Shire, with woods and fields and little rivers. He ought to be comfortable here. I'm leaving everything to him, of course, except a few oddments. I hope he will be happy when he gets used to being on his own. It's time he was his own master now. Everything, said Gandalf. The ring as well. You agreed to that, you remember. Well, yes, I suppose so, stammered Bilbo. Where is it? In an envelope, if you must know, said Bilbo impatiently. There on the mantelpiece. Well, no. Here it is in my pocket. He hesitated. Isn't that odd now? He said softly to himself. Yet, after all, why not? Why shouldn't it stay there? Gandalf looked again very hard at Bilbo, and there was a gleam in his eyes. I think, Bilbo, he said quietly, I should leave it behind. Don't you want to? Well, yes. And no. Now it comes to it, I don't like parting with it at all, I may say. I don't really see why I should. Why do you want me to? He asked, and a curious change came over his voice. It was sharp with suspicion and annoyance. You're always badgering me about my ring. You've never bothered me about the other things that I got on my journey. No, but I had to badger you, said Gandalf. I wanted the truth. It was important. Magic rings are, well, magical, and they are rare and curious. I was professionally interested in your ring, you may say, and I still am. I should like to know where it is if you go wandering again. Also, I think you have had it quite long enough. You won't need it any more, Bilbo, unless I am quite mistaken. Bilbo flushed, and there was an angry light in his eyes. His kindly face grew hard. Why not? He cried. And what business is it of yours, anyway, to know what I do with my own things? It is my own. I found it. It came to me. Yes, yes, said Gandalf, but there is no need to get angry. Well, if I am, it is your fault, said Bilbo. It is mine, I tell you. My own, my precious. Yes, my precious. The wizard's face remained grave and attentive, and only a flicker in his deep eyes showed that he was startled and indeed alarmed. It has been called that before, he said, but not by you. But I say it now, and why not? Even if Gollum said the same once. It's not his now, but mine, and I shall keep it, I say. Gandalf stood up. He spoke sternly. You will be a fool if you do, Bilbo, he said. You make that clearer with every word you say. It's got far too much hold on you. Let it go, and then you can go yourself and be free. I think I'm going to pause there. We're not really near a break.
Right. But we were about to see Gandalf the Grey uncloaked.
Well, we'll have to see that next week.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
Sounds like a plan.
Oh, gracious.
Oh, actually, not next week. I'm going to be out of town next week. Week after.
Week after. 2 weeks. Oh, my God. Okay. I feel like there was something I wanted to say, but I can't remember what it was. Sorry about your
Text it to me if you
Wensleydale.
remember. What's that?
Sorry that I forgot the Wensleydale.
It's okay.
Oh
We
my.
will survive. All right. Goodbye.
Cuidado.
Liamas.